welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. 10 seasons of empowering entrepreneurs, 10 seasons of identifying champions and innovators. One such innovator on the show tonight, and that's Nykaa. And we are talking with them about the big trends as far as the retail space is concerned. What should you, the entrepreneur, keep in mind when it comes to the e-tailing space, when it comes to beauty? What are some of the things you can look forward to? Should you be looking at the capital markets for fundraising? All of those in today's deep dive with the management behind Nykaa. Let me go ahead and introduce our guest tonight.
Anchit Nayar, CEO E-commerce Beauty, Nykaa. Adwaita Nayar, co-founder Nykaa, CEO Nykaa Fashion.
Let's also then talk about why Bharat or customers from tier 3 and tier 4 markets make up such a huge base as far as your own revenues are concerned. Correct me if I'm wrong, I understand about 60% of your demand is coming from outside of the metros. How important is this market going to continue to be for brands like yourself? What is your strategy to be able to effectively target these markets? And what is your advice for someone who's watching this interview about being able to sell to them? Should their strategy be different? Should their communication be different? Should the price points that you're selling at for perhaps, the Bharat really be different? What do you want to advise them? Maybe I can come to you first, Anchit.
Yeah, sure. So for us, both segments are incredibly important, right? So you've got the tier 1, what you're referring to as maybe as India, and then you've got this reference of tier 2, tier 3 as you're classifying as Bharat. Both are equally important to us as a platform.
Yeah.
And what really stood out to us is actually there are more similarities than differences between this classification of tier 1 versus tier 2 and 3. What we are seeing is there is a very deep understanding and awareness actually for beauty that has developed in these markets because of the fact that everything is now digital and that the consumer has access to social media and to apps like Nykaa. So now, so many of our customers, a majority of our customers actually live in these tier 2, tier 3 towns, and they are fully aware and totally up to speed with the latest trends in beauty because they're consuming content and they're learning about the latest in brands and product on our social media channels where we've got 10 million followers plus, so there is a large following of Nykaa in these smaller towns. They get, they're being educated and made aware, and then they're shopping on the platform. So for us, both segments need to be addressed. Both have a lot of similarities and a few differences.
Which brings up the Nykaa Superstore. I understand that you're allowing small businesses to be able to buy at wholesale prices, and that's really speaking to the target audience of the leaders of tomorrow. Just run us through how that business and that platform works.
There is a large pockets of consumption happening through these channels. And the whole distribution business had not been reimagined, had not been innovated at the same rate at which the B2C business had in India in terms of distribution for beauty products. So we saw a gap and we thought we've built this fantastic technology in-house. We've got all these learnings from working with the best brands globally as well as domestically. How do we leverage our learnings from the B2C side to try to digitize and try to totally revamp the way that B2B business is done for the beauty space in India? And I think that's the genesis of Superstore. And we're seeing very good traction with that business because there are so many brands in the country. There's massive brand proliferation. And all the brands now are looking to do omnichannel. They want to be distributed online through Nykaa and other platforms, but they also want to have physical distribution. And Nykaa can serve as the perfect partner to enable that through a very digitized, light, very different way of selling B2B. And it's a great model for the retailers as well, because now everything can be done through this app called the Superstore app.
Let's also talk about the big trend that we were talking about for the e-tail space when we started this conversation was as far as homegrown brands are concerned and own brands. And at this point, I want to talk about your plan for building this, what I understand you are calling the house of brands, where you want to have more and more brands that are, in-house, that are taking on perhaps, the larger brands, etc., that we're seeing. Could you talk to us? Is this a plan that you have across the beauty and the fashion space? How's that really going to, pan out? How are you perhaps going to be communicating those brands and, the strategy really behind that differently? Insights really for someone who's watching this interview about how you're planning on taking really this platform or the strategy forward.
Yeah, I can take that. So, I think Anchit mentioned earlier that first and foremost, we are multi-brand retailers.
Yes.
But we do also see an opportunity in creating our owned brands. It comes back to what I said a bit earlier, which is I think in India, there's a huge vacuum for brands and, customers are craving more options, more brands. A lot of international brands have still not entered the country when you think about fashion in particular. So we think that we too, as a company, have an opportunity to build our own brands. We don't like to call them private labels because they truly are brands in their own right. So right now we have about 3 of our own brands on the beauty side and 6 of our own brands on the fashion side.
Okay.
They span across everything from, everyday cosmetics to, a cosmetics line that we have with Katrina Kaif. On the fashion side, a lingerie brand, an athleisure brand, a Western wear brand, fun, fusion wear, jewelry. Some of these have been acqui-hires as well. But in a nutshell, what we really are trying to do is for each of these brands to have their own life. And that means that they'll retail everywhere. They won't retail just on the Nykaa or Nykaa fashion platform. It might mean that they'll open their own stores. It might mean that they'll have their own MTGT strategy, but we'll really let them come into their own beyond, the brand Nykaa itself.
I want to talk at this point about working in a family-owned, family-run business. It's a two-part question. Let me first start by talking about the fact that the family still owns 50% of the business. First and foremost, this is perhaps in some sense hinder bringing in a professional manager. I know you've spoken about this in the past, but for our viewers, what would you like to tell them? Because 90 to 95% of India's MSMEs are family-owned and run.
Yeah. So look, I think I'll kick it off and you can add, but I think Nykaa is very unique, right? Because yes, in ways we are a family business, but in many ways we are also an absolutely professionally run company.
Yeah.
We've got chief executives. We've got a 13-person management committee team. We've got 13 CXOs, 11 or 10 of which are all professionals. And they are incredibly well versed in the businesses. They come from some of the most blue chip companies in the industry. They've been with us for many, many years. So we are a very interesting, unique mix. I don't think we can be bucketed as a traditional family business because we are a new age consumer technology company, publicly listed. But also we're not a fully professional company either. And I think there's benefits to having the right mix, right? So I think one thing you'll see is that a family business, a family owned and run business where the promoter group has a large stake in the company, it leads to them, and then when they're operators as well, they have a very large skin in the game.
Yeah.
And promoters can sometimes be a lot more longer term in their thinking, because for us, there is really nothing else. This is our business. This is, as we say, it's part of our family. Everyone here at Nykaa is part of our extended family. And the success of the company, building a long-term sustainable business, not for short-term gains, but rather for the foreseeable future. That kind of long-term commitment, I think, is unique to family businesses. And I think that's a benefit that should not be ignored.
Okay. The second part of that question is as far as the two of you working together is concerned. For those of our viewers who may not be aware, both of you are twins. And Adwaita, in the past, you've said that the first year of working together for the both of you was difficult because, you're figuring out dynamics, you're figuring out how to be a family and at the same time professionals because you're working with a team. What has that experience been like? What advice or takeaways can you give our audience based on your personal experience?
Yeah, I think I think working with family, obviously, it takes some amount of adjustment. And then once you're adjusted, I think it's quite a wonderful thing. I think in terms of what makes it great, First, like immense amounts of trust, right? Like you just wholeheartedly trust your family members, of course. So I think having that level of trust is, really fantastic and allows you to really focus on the core business and really the business priorities at hand. I think a second thing is like immense amounts of respect. I feel like I respect Anchit, my brother, a lot, and I respect, of course, my mother a lot, and I learn so much from both of them. So I think having a foundation of true respect is very, very essential.
Yeah.
And number three, and this cannot be understated, is you need to have ways of working and SOPs the same way you would in, just running your core business, right? And it's something that, particularly I've worked through even with my mother in the early days, that there have to be ways of working. So for example, that might mean for us, like, not talking about work at the dinner table, making sure that when you're on holidays together, you're not talking about work, putting some boundaries in place, putting boundaries in terms of how you communicate to each other in front of larger teams. So these boundaries and these conversations have to happen, but it's not insurmountable, right? It's just a way of working, a way of operating the same way you would have with your teams or, in your relationships. So I think it's a wonderful thing once it's sort of smoothened out.
Is it easy not talking about Nykaa at the dinner table though?
It's not easy at all.
I don't think that's ever happened. I don't know. Adwaita says it's a ways of working, but I think every dinner conversation and every holiday we've been on, we've always talked about it. But it's not because, I think it comes from the fact that Adwaita, myself, and obviously Falguni, we all passionately care for this business. As I said, it's almost like a family member for us. So it's, we can put these artificial ideas in place that we won't talk about it, but it's so incredibly important to us. We're so passionate. We love what we do. We are so deeply invested in the success of the company and all of our colleagues at Nykaa that, it doesn't feel like a job to us. It really doesn't, at least not to me. And I think just adding to what Adwaita said, finally, family is incredibly support. I mean, the support system is incredible. The trust and the support and the kind of mentorship that we get, obviously from Falguni and obviously from each other. And we're there for the company. We're there for each other. And I think that is, if it works like that, I think it can be such a powerful tool for any company.
Yeah, just adding one quick thing on that,
Sure.
like entrepreneurship is really lonely, right? And I'm sure a lot of the entrepreneurs who are listening in, particularly if they're building by themselves, not with a co-founder, not with another family member, it's an insanely lonely journey, like the lows and the highs both. And so I think in that way, we're definitely, all three of us are lucky that we get to, truly have each other to kind of get through that, get through both the lows and the highs, I think.
Anchit, Adwaita, I have to take a quick commercial break. On that note, we're back in just a moment. Welcome back. Our big leaders of tomorrow icon tonight is Nykaa. I have a few quick questions as we're ending today's interview that I want to try and squeeze in. And first is the fundraising journey. In your initial couple of years, and we were talking about that, as you were approaching VCs, I understand a lot of them said, we don't think this market is going to be huge. So you did face that little bit of rejection, if I can call it that. Based on that and based on where you are right now, two things that you can perhaps tell our entrepreneurs that they should keep in mind when they are fundraising. This is to both of you. And Anchit, maybe I can come to you first.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first thing is it's a marathon, not a sprint. And there will be ups and downs. There will be moments of pure high and ecstasy and moments of total despair. And, but I think it's all about evening that out, right? So not getting too happy when you're up, not getting too sad when you're down. I think that's being even keel is incredibly important in this business, whether it's with regards to fundraising or it's with regards to the general operations of the business. And I think the second thing is build a business for the future, build a business that is, that is long-term in vision. And I think for us, what really worked was, we created a company that was here to address a real customer need, right? So it was always going to succeed with the consumers because we were doing it for them, but it also had a very sound business model on the back end from a profitability perspective. And I think that cannot be underestimated. There's new age businesses it is an important factor, which is to balance growth and profitability and try to build a business which can do both. I think those are my two pieces of advice.
Two takeaways, Adwaita?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I think, very specifically on the fundraising process, I think I would really advise people to have exactly the right amount of money, neither too much nor too little. I think in terms of, having enough is quite important. I think a lot of businesses require enough money to even give it a fighting chance. So I've definitely seen companies that have buckled just because they've not had the right starting, capital with them. And I think you have to have like at least a 2-year, 3-year horizon of trying to fund this business for any business to really take off. So don't, lowball the amount of money that you need. And this might seem counterintuitive, but my second point on that is actually don't also take more money than you need, because it really does dilute you very quickly as a entrepreneur. And, you will find a lot of funds and investors who are willing to give you far greater sums, particularly once you've got some product market fit, than you even might want or might need. Not only does that dilute you, it actually makes you spend your money in ways that are not practical or sensible. And so I think really having a very thoughtful strategy around how much you want to raise and being quite clear and firm about that is one big lesson. I think the second big lesson, echoing Anchit, is build profitable, sustainable business models. It doesn't have to be in the first year or 2 or 3, but it has to have a path there, because eventually, and we feel it, eventually with the IPO, eventually the buck ends, right? You can't just keep building businesses that are purely based on valuation with no real profitability framework in place. So I think profitability and sustainable business model is quite key.
Okay, I'm going to end today's conversation by asking both of you for advice for our entrepreneurs who are watching today's interview. My first question to you, Adwaita, and this is something that I'm personally, passionate about and love talking to our entrepreneurs who join us on the show. And that's as far as funding that comes into the ecosystem for businesses that have been founded by women. My question is, do you think perhaps the initial days when your mother was trying to fundraise would have been easier were it being done by a man, or, your father, for instance, if he weren't running KKR and he had started Nykaa, do you think it might have been easier for you to have raised those funds? To you, Adwaita?
I think it's, I think using Falguni, my mother's example, is not the correct one, because she had, 20, 25 years of fantastic work experience and an amazing network in place. So I think she did not have any disadvantage basis her gender. But at the same time, I'm obviously cognizant that a lot of, much younger women in their early 20s, perhaps without as much of a, backing or a legacy, must be finding it hard. But we didn't personally experience that.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, but anything you would like to say to our female entrepreneurs who are going to be watching this interview about maybe 1 or 2 things that you've learned on the job that has helped you along your journey?
Yeah, I think all the women entrepreneurs listening know that gender doesn't matter. Like women, I get, frustrated when I hear the conversation coming to gender. Like gender makes no difference. Women are as capable, more capable, both in terms of resilience, intellect, and in every way possible. So I think it's really not about gender. I think my wish for all entrepreneurs, basis my own experiences, for resilience. I think that's what you need. You need to be thick-skinned enough to get through the highs and lows, which definitely last year after year, through the whole journey.
Okay. Anchit, my last question to you is, watching an interview that you did where you had spoken about why the UAE market is so crucial for you. In the backdrop of the UAE-India FTA, could you maybe comment on how important that market is for you, expansion plans, anything that you can take? Are you okay discussing that?
I'll comment high level. I don't think I had said it was incredibly important, but I think the point we were trying to make in that interview was that we see the Gulf in general, the GCC countries, as having a lot of similarities to India, and also having a very large Indian expat population. So we believe that Nykaa is a brand has become synonymous with beauty in India. And we have some fantastic brands of our own, right? Like Nykaa Cosmetics, as well as our joint venture with Katrina Kaif called K Beauty. And we think these brands would do well and would resonate well with consumers in the Gulf countries. I think that was our limited point. So we are, like any other business, we do look from time to time at international opportunities. And for us, what seems probably like a very logical opportunity could potentially be the Gulf. But I think, there's nothing set in stone, there's nothing concrete. I think like any business evaluating opportunities, that is one that is available to us.
All right. completely out of time on tonight's episode, but we have so much more coming up. Do stay tuned. For feedback on today's interview, do send it to us on the details that you see on your screens. Our number is there. All you have to do is just send us a WhatsApp message and we will get in touch with you. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.